Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of SmithWeekly, including Andrew C., Matt S., Paul M., and Mike P. We have a returning guest on the program today. Mr. Clive Johnson is back on the show. Clive is the president and CEO of B2Gold Corp, a senior mid-tier gold producer and developer with operations in Mali, the Philippines, and Namibia. The company also has a pipeline of development projects in Colombia and Burkina Faso, aside from an exploration portfolio. B2Gold is a portfolio holding at SmithWeekly Research. B2Gold is listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol BTG and also on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol BTO. Mr. Clive, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Yeah, good, Andrew. Thank you. Good to be with you again.
Well, Clive, it's been about a year and 10 months or so since we last spoke on the podcast. Lots of things have changed in the gold sector. You know, the Great Plague, of course, supply chain strategy 101 challenges, plus so much more. But let's kick it off here by getting the Clive view on the industry and the market conditions.
Well, in our case, we're enjoying another very good year in B2Gold of gold production. We just came with our third quarter production, and we'll announce next week our financial results for the quarter. So we're having another very good year. In terms of the overall sector, you know, markets can be strange beasts sometimes. And when you look at where we were a little over a year ago, the B2Gold actually touched $10 Canadian a share, making us valued at $10 billion company. And then the gold prices touched 2,000 an ounce, and then gold came off to some extent, and all the gold stocks got hit pretty hard. I think much harder than they should have, really. The way that the gold equities acted, you'd think gold had gone down to 1,500 or something like that. And it hadn't, of course. It had only really dropped into the 1,700s, and now we're back we're at 1,800 again. So the typical reaction in the market sometimes when gold becomes out of favor, the gold equities get hit harder. In our case, we got hit a little harder than most because we have had an issue in Mali where our biggest mine is, but it's got nothing to do with the mine, the Fekola mine. The issue is about an exploration permit that we feel we have a legal right to get an extension of, and have been in discussions with the government about resolving that issue, which I think is going well. But when political risk raises its head, and people sometimes panic a little bit, and they'll attempt to sort of oversell something. So it's not as if we've got a lot of people selling our stock, especially our big shareholders. It's more there's been a bit of a buyer's strike in the gold equities overall. And in our case, because some people took the view of let's see if they, let's wait and see what B2Gold does. So we came up with a very good quarter production, and we'll have our financials out, as I said, next week. We always said the second half of the year was going to be much stronger for us from a cash flow perspective, because of just the way mining works when you have more pre-stripping in the first half and some other things, which meant the production was weighted to the second half of the year. And we've proven that, I think, with the third quarter production, and hopefully I think next week's financial results will show that we're having a very good year. We're on track for our guidance of right around 1 million ounces.
That's good, and to look at it from a big picture view of at least on an annual basis, and I think that's important rather than getting, splitting hairs on the quarter by quarter results. And then certainly the political risk is interesting here. I mean, we've seen recent events out of Sudan as well, which is disappointing for a lot of parties involved there. But how about recent news on Kirkland Lake and Agnico Eagle merger? Thoughts on this transaction? And do you think with the cash flows remaining strong, balance sheets are starting to shore up, do you expect to see more in M&A across the production, development, and junior sector?
Yeah, I think we will for sure. I think that for some years, this sector has needed fewer, better run companies. And fortunately, if you look at the last 5 years, I would say the industry has responded well, which it needed to do in terms of becoming more responsible, becoming more profitable, and better run mining companies. We went through a phase for many years of growth at any cost, including the big guys, and that was very damaging for the credibility of the gold space. So now you see companies, we're obviously one of the leaders in terms of profitability, paying a big dividend, yet continuing to grow the company. I think you're going to see more M&A, but it's more competitive now than it was some years ago when we were doing it, when it was a very contrarian thing to do when we went to Namibia and did a deal to acquire the Otjikoto mine, and then subsequently went to Mali and acquired the Fekola mine by taking over Papillon Resources. Those deals were very controversial, only in the sense that M&A wasn't happening then because the industry overall, not us, but the industry had done such a bad job of acquisitions and construction and other things that the shareholders were saying, I'm not going to buy you if you're building a gold mine because I don't trust any of you. So fortunately, the industry's improved for that. It worked out very well for us, but M&A now, we're looking for sure. We've got some good projects in the pipeline that we already have and some great exploration upside we're seeing, but we're clearly looking. But for us, it'll probably have to be some kind of a special opportunity because we're not going to likely to win some bidding war in Nevada because there's other companies that didn't grow when we did that need to grow now. So I think acquisitions aren't going to get cheaper. I'm glad to see that we're away from the big huge premiums, which, you know, we're not a positive from the investor perspective at the end of the day, the big premiums paid for acquisitions of sometimes marginal projects. So it'll be interesting to watch. It's good for the sector overall, and I'm pleased to see that many gold mining companies are a lot better run than they were, 5 or 10 years ago.
We see some of these various transactions, some of them at the market. Hats off to anybody who can get a at the market zero premium merger, and then we see things like Calibre and Fior getting together just as of I think yesterday. So good to see some of these things happening, and then also too I think compared to valuations maybe 2016, 2017 timeframe, Clive, and then seeing some of this trough happen here where the juniors just got unloved, mid-tiers come down, and we've seen some values starting to pop up that are looking a little bit better now as compared to a couple of years ago. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next on this front. And I know you can't tell us too much here because you guys have got financials coming up shortly, but can you just give us an operations site-by-site overview at B2Gold here as things stand now, perhaps what you see coming up on upcoming objectives and targets for 2022?
We're on track, as we said in the news release recently, for our guidance, and we're on track to produce right around 1 million ounces for this year, and our all-in sustaining costs, we're right on track there to be in that $870 to $900. We think we'll be right in that range, which is pretty impressive because you are seeing some inflationary pressures in terms of fuel and other things. So we had a production beat at Fekola and also at the Masbate mine in the Philippines. So that more additional production, we think we'll end up the year somewhere around 40,000 ounces above, 30 to 40,000 ounces above where we had projected. So that helps in terms of the cost. But we've done well in keeping costs in line, and we expect to be within our projections for the year. And that's going to be interesting to see as we get into next year. There's going to be some cost pressure for fuel and other things potentially from what we're seeing today and what's being predicted. But we've got low cost operations. We're one of the lowest cost producers out there, and we intend to stay that way. In terms of the future, there's a lot of reasons to be, I think, very optimistic about where we're going at B2Gold. We've got a good, strong production profile when you look over the next 5 years from the existing mines that we have and beyond that. But we also have some really good upside potential in the area around Fekola. We've been doing some extensive drilling to the north, and that's why this Menankoto license, which is the one that we've been in discussions with the government trying to get an extension of that exploration license, and we believe we're going to get that. But there's another license to the north of Menankoto in this area we call Anaconda, generally Bentaco. We've had this is a license that we have, and we've had some very good results there, indicating the potential for a lot of additional mineralization from 20 kilometers away from Fekola that we can truck down some of the weathered material, truck it down to the Fekola mill starting in the second half of next year to increase production very cheaply. And we've also, there's a potential there to make another, we think, significant discovery that could be similar to Fekola in this area called Anaconda to the north. Ultimately, one day we might build an additional mill. In addition to the project right next to Fekola called Cardinal, we've had some very good drill results there and have started mining that. So Fekola is just a wonderful project that originally we were going to produce 300,000 ounces a year. We're now producing 600,000 ounces a year, just produced for 2 million pounds of one of the lowest cost gold mines in the world. Just a gift that keeps on giving. Tremendous potential for much more from Fekola. In addition to that, we have the Gramalote project in Colombia, which are coming into a final feasibility study in the second quarter of next year. We've got some encouraging results there, and we've gone back to do more drilling and looking at our costs to see if we can improve the economics. It looked pretty good last time we did a study, but now we think there's improvements to be made there by cutting some of the capital costs and also by some additional drilling to divide the capital costs by some more ounces. So that could potentially give us another 200,000 ounces a year from that project in Colombia with our joint venture partner, AngloGold Ashanti. It would be 200,000 our share. But I'm also very excited about our exploration. One of the things that I think we're one of the best producers in the world, one of the best in the world at finding gold. You know, I've always said, Andrew, that the cheapest ounces are the ones you find. And we've had a tremendous track record between BMA and B2Gold of finding gold, as well as doing accretive acquisitions and then finding gold on top of that in these acquisitions. So we've got a pipeline of projects in places like Uzbekistan, Finland, and all this, what I talked about in Mali and elsewhere. So we're very excited about the $65 million exploration budget we have and finding more gold around our mines, but also looking for new discoveries. So in addition to M&A, we think we have the potential to find more world-class gold deposits in our exploration portfolio.
Lots of stuff there, Clive, and I appreciate, you guys are attacking on a lot of things, and you guys have played a lot of defense and will continue to play a lot of defense with regards to your costs, and that is a good component of what you guys are able to do is operational expertise, but also you guys are able to use the drill bit as well and move things forward. I want to talk about jurisdictions in a moment, but just coming back to the company broadly here, talk about where we are as far as capital structure here today. If you can share maybe as of the last financial, the cash position, the debt position, and then also major holders of the equity.
Yeah, in terms of equity holders, our biggest shareholders would be BlackRock, Fidelity, VanEck, and some of the other funds that many people would recognize. So also a pretty strong retail component, we've been doing this for a very long time between Beam and B2Gold, and we've had a long history of retail, a lot of retail shows, which we really appreciate that long-term support. And also, in Europe, we did very well over the years in BIMA, and people haven't forgotten that, even though it was a while ago now. Once we started B2Gold 13 years ago, a lot of people remember fondly the BIMA and the tremendous upside that people saw and the money they made off of BIMA. So, even though our shares were hit pretty hard this year, now they're recovering back, which is nice to see. If you bought our shares 10 years ago, I think you're up something like 1,300%. So obviously we've done a good job of that in the longer term. In terms of where we sit, we're in a very strong position financially. We're debt free, and we're able to pay a very significant dividend, yielding about 4% in the dividend. So that's a great reward to our shareholders. I'm a real believer in dividends and not a believer in share buybacks. Never have been. I honestly believe if that's the best thing we can do with this hard-earned money, then maybe we should go do something else. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think the dividends combined with using some of the cash that we have to grow the company, I think is a really good strategy that our shareholders like a lot. So we're going to continue with that. In terms of cash, we're expecting to generate on $630 million in cash from operations this year, leaving us in a very strong position. We have a standby facility from our banks, $600 million that's undrawn that we can draw at any time. We're renegotiating that right now with very favorable terms. So we've got the ability to react, whether it's to build a new mine or whether it's to use some cash and some shares in an acquisition. As I said, we're looking very, very carefully at what's out there in the world today that might add value to our shareholders. So we're in just fantastic financial shape going forward, and I think it's great to be able to pay a dividend and still grow the company. A lot of our shareholders bought our stock because they believed we could grow this company as we have from zero production to 1 million ounces over 12 years. And we want to continue to grow. But if you can pay a dividend like we're doing at the same time, I don't know that there's too many better investments out there. And it's nice to see gold companies paying dividends. I mean, if you said 5 or 10 years ago we'd be paying these kind of dividends, I don't think you would have been taken very seriously in the gold space. It's about credibility. It's a business. We shouldn't be running this business just on the hope that gold goes higher. We should be able to be very profitable and grow the company based on whatever gold conditions we face, as we've always done.
The only place I disagree, Clive, here is if your shares were really tremendously cheap and you had nothing better to do at the time due to market conditions, I would certainly be a willing buyer of the stock if they were so cheap that it made so much sense to do so. But other than that, I fully agree. I think dividends are an important component here as well, and you guys have one of the best structures for that. How about the growth narrative? As you said, 10 years looking back, there's tremendous growth of the company thanks to you and your team. What is your view on future growth for the company in terms of the type of growth that you guys have experienced, the last 10 years? And of course, in the mining business, it's a deplete and replace business. What do you think the production profile and growth is going to be in the future? Do you see that it's maybe slowing? Is it steady? Do you see it geared to increase by further developments and M&A? What's your thoughts on that looking forward?
Yeah, well, I think as I mentioned, we've got the Gramalote project in the pipeline in Colombia, where we'll see what the final feasibility study says, but we're pretty positive on that one becoming the next mine in terms of organically. But also when you look at the situation in Mali with this significant results we're getting right next to Fekola, this Cardinal Zone, which is open, and that's this mill just keeps on delivering with the ability to handle more material than we had imagined. So the ability to grow production from Fekola, I mean, the Fekola area, the property area in the kilometers to the north, there's a real potential for we're making them additional discoveries there. So there's reason to believe that Fekola will continue to grow potentially quite dramatically beyond the 600,000 ounces that we're producing right now. But also, when I look at exploration in the Philippines, for example, we've been there for quite a long time, done a great job of that mine. I mean, when we acquired CJ Mining, who owned the Masbate mine in the Philippines, an Australian company, they did a good job building it. We came in and thought we could make some changes to lower the costs, and we did that dramatically. But we've also had exploration success there year on year, and that's one of the keys in terms of for our industry. When you start mining, it's a depleting asset unless you have a really good exploration team and unless you continue to find more gold, which we've done in every case, everywhere we are, including the Otjikoto mine in Namibia as well. So I see us growing the company. I'm never one to go out there and say we're going to be X million ounces by X year, because I think you can put undue pressure on yourselves and doing some deal you might regret. So we don't do that, but we're just going to grow with opportunities we see. And I think exploration, we have some of the best exploration targets in this company today that our team, led by Tom Garrigan, who's been working with me for 40 years, has seen for probably ever. Some of the potential we have around Fekola, some of the potential we're looking at in Uzbekistan and Finland and other places. We're very excited about our ability to grow through the drill. But I think is an important point to make here for your listeners, is that what makes B2Gold a little unusual or unique is that we were born of exploration twice, Bema and B2Gold. So we built these companies into million-ounce producers and multi-billion-dollar companies, starting at exploration and learning how to become a respected builder of mines and operator of mines. But we've always had this entrepreneurial streak, which I guess comes in part from me, the willingness to go to Russia, back in the day, Chile or Nicaragua or Mali. We've always been very entrepreneurial, yet we're very good at the bricks and mortars of our business, the mining, responsible mining, safe mining, environmental responsibility. All those things we're very good at, but we're still driven by being very entrepreneurial. We're looking at Egypt right now, some of these other countries. So we've still got that spirit that I've had for 40 years in this industry of being a really good producer, but still having an entrepreneurial culture. I think that's one of the reasons we're so successful, because we'll do deals that other companies may not do because they may be more conservative. So we're aggressive, but we're never reckless. And I think that's one of the reasons why this company has been one of the biggest success stories in the gold space in the last 10 or 12 years, and will continue to be.
And on jurisdictions, Clive, you've got some in the industry calling for a return to legacy nation jurisdictions like Canada, US, Australia, maybe some parts of Europe. Collectively, I like to call them red tape legacy destinations versus those developing frontier destinations that are geared towards green tape. Then you have the argument surrounding nations that have fiscal relations with the US and the dollar versus those that do not, the economic implications of that. What's your position on this thought process that these frontier and developing jurisdictions are not the place to be? Because I think you would say, contrary to that, there's been fantastic success in places like Mali and Namibia. What's your thoughts on this thinking?
Sure. Well, that's clearly a good question. That's clearly a core part of our strategy. Sometimes it's to go where others fear to tread, or others may be more conservative, as I mentioned. But the secret to managing political risk is really quite simple, and that's delivering on the promises that you make. If you go to Chile back in the day, or Russia, or many other countries we've been to, and I've met with presidents of these countries and senior people, if you promise them that you're going to build a gold mine in 3 years and spend $500 million to build it, and you're going to train their people and create these jobs and do great environmental work and social programs, they believe you because you're a Western company. So if you don't deliver, which too many companies have done in the past, not deliver on the promises you make, you lose credibility with the governments and the people in the countries that you work. And once you lose that credibility, that's when you start having problems sometimes with governments raising taxes or other measures because they've lost the trust in you. So I think that's a critical thing. Our company's based on I think it's an extension of the Canadian culture. I call it fairness, respect, and transparency. That's how we try and treat everyone around the world. That's why I think if we have problems sometimes, like in Mali, with a dispute of an exploration license, with working honestly and openly, transparently with the government, we'll resolve any issues that we come up with. So the understanding of political risk is understanding what have you done? Have you delivered on the promise you made? And if you deliver on the promises you make in life, not just in business. I think you make more friends than enemies. And I think that's really the key to our success. Understanding cultures, respecting the cultures in the countries we're in, treating them with respect, fairness, and transparency, and delivering. That's the key, and we'll continue to do that. You know, you're not going to find probably not going to find too many great new gold mines in Nevada. There might be a few, but these areas in Canada have been very well explored by very good people. So we've always been prepared to think outside the box. And, you know, I always said, Andrew, by definition, bold initiatives by definition are done by the few, not the many. So we'll continue to do bold things that make sense and continue to deliver.
And with that, Clive, how about places that you believe are ripe for mining and development, you know, welcoming nations, if you will? Where today would you be looking, and where would B2Gold go besides the places you're already at? I mean, we know that certainly in places like Namibia, Tier 1 Africa is fantastic. But what other places would you add under the B2 umbrella if the right opportunity came along? Maybe mention a few countries.
Yeah, well, we and others have been working with the government of Egypt, who is signaling the fact that they want foreign investment in mining. So they've got tremendous gold potential, of course, in Egypt, and fairly, for the most part, quite unexplored. So countries like that, I think there's more opportunities in Asia as well. I think you look at where Uzbekistan is the largest gold mine in the world, is in Uzbekistan, and they've not had a lot of Western exploration. We were invited by the government of Uzbekistan a couple of years ago, new sort of Western leading government, to come in and be the first company to do joint ventures with the government of Uzbekistan. They chose us. And I think that's part of the credibility, that our reputation around the world, because of everything we've done in BEMA and B2Gold. I think there's governments that recognize immediately that we're the kind of partner they want. We're the kind of company because of delivering on those promises. So yeah, we really are an international company, and we're proud of that. Some people look at our map of the world sometimes and say, how can you possibly run all these mines in all these different countries? Well, the key is the people. The key is you can't run mines from Vancouver, so you need great people, but you also need an executive team that has, you know, many of those 40 years together. We've seen most of it, we've done most of it, and that experience and the people on the ground are the keys. Look at COVID. We came through COVID extremely well, and I think there's an opportunity here to go to governments around the world, in countries that we're in and that we're not in, to say, look at what we did during COVID for these countries we were in and the people. The gold mining industry is something good to have in your country, because it's responsible these days, and can deliver a lot in terms of jobs and taxes, etc. So I think post-COVID, there's a real positive story, and I'll be telling it to the world about how good gold mining, not just us, but how good contributor gold mining was during COVID.
Those are good points. On relation to the two countries, would a place like Angola interest you at all?
We're pretty open-minded. We have been looking at some opportunities in places like Zimbabwe and other African countries. So for sure, we're definitely we're pretty open. We've tried, Andrew, for decades. We've tried to be driven more by geology than geography, meaning that we're open to going. We're not going to go to really dangerous countries. Of course, safety is paramount, but we have to satisfy ourselves we can work safely in these countries with our people. But at the end of the day, we try and be driven by where are the places in the world, like Uzbekistan, for example, that has the largest gold mine in the world, yet is really quite underexplored.
True. I've heard some good positive things coming out of there, and the government's pro-mining, pro-development stance here. In Namibia, you've got a JV earn-in, amongst operations, of course, that have been fantastic, but you've got a JV earn-in on Dundu with Fortis Metals. Does B2Gold intend on completing that earn-in? And let me couple that, Clive, with what types of deposits and potential production profile characteristics suit B2Gold in Namibia at this point? You guys are a bigger company today, but what would you need to consider looking at a project in a place like Namibia for development purposes, and something that actually fits the company's size requirements?
Right, that's a great question. As you grow, you're obviously looking to build some bigger mines. At the end of the day, we did a very intelligent deal with the Nicaraguan assets with Calibre, where we still have a major stake in them, and they've done a really good job. And we've just recently announced a deal, actually yesterday, in Burkina Faso, to allow West African Mining to go forward with the Kiaka project, because they see a mine they can build. They've got some synergies there. So those are some of the decisions that you make along the way. I think for a new country and a new opportunity, we'd probably be looking at something around 200,000 to 250,000 ounces a year of potential production. Everyone always talks about wanting at least a 10-year mine life. But I think if you're in the country and you're already there, like Namibia, then you don't have those hard and fast rules. So if you could add something in Namibia that made sense and add another 100 or 150 or 200,000 ounces a year, that's something you would look at if you're already in the country, I would say. So, that's part of our criteria and how we look at things.
And how about that JV earn-in, Clive? What's your thought on that particular project there? Do you see that that's something you guys will continue to do with Forces?
We're doing a technical evaluation of it right now. We're looking at the drilling that we've done, and really we're trying to decide, frankly, if that's a project that meets our criteria in terms of the size and the potential. So I think over the next 3 months or so, we're going to have an indication of where that goes. And there's assuming an opportunity there for B2Gold, or perhaps if we decided to do another deal, allowing someone else run with it. But it's too early to say right now, but we're evaluating it right now. But we like it. We like the project.
ESG matters, Clive. This remains to be a hot topic, of which it was CSR when you and I last spoke on this program. But talk about the company's ESG efforts and what tweaks maybe that you've made or see as more important today against prior reiterations of really just good practices and policy related to community and mineral development.
Yeah, I think part of when I talk about delivering on the promises we make, a big part of that is ESG and CSR. We've been doing some really great things in the communities in which we work for decades. We did back in the day, not because it was required by institutions or bankers. We did it because it was the right thing to do. Once again, we're taking this culture on the road. So we've been doing things in Russia and Chile long time ago now that were cutting edge back then in terms of the various programs we do in terms of education, agriculture, all sorts of different ways we can leave the community better than when we arrived there. So we've got some really exciting stuff on our responsible mining report that we're very proud of. And some of the things we do, education and agriculture I mentioned, are two very big parts of what we do. We've got some really interesting initiatives, we think, outside the box in this area as well. You probably heard about our Rhino gold bars for Namibia, where we took 1,000 ounces of gold from the Otjikoto mine and donated it to the Save the Rhino Trust and made collector's items, 1 ounce gold bars, and sold them around the world through Kitco, actually, to raise $1.7 million US to help save the black rhino, which the only place in the world that it roams wild is in northern Namibia. And that really helps the communities in that area as well. So there's things like that. There's helping rebuild the coral reefs in the Philippines that weren't damaged by us, but damaged by fishing and bad mining practices from others. So revitalizing the mangrove groves, regrowing the coral reefs, doing local markets, is on and on. I could go on for this for an hour just on the stuff we're doing. And ESG solar is a big part. We were the first mining company to go solar with a plant in Namibia. And now we have a very large solar HFO plant in Mali, and we'll continue on that. So we're very much committed to showing people that mining can be good, very good for the communities. And we have an old expression that we used to say, this is not your grandfather's mining company. This is way more responsible. I'm so glad to see so many other companies doing the right thing. Some are doing it because they have to, frankly, and some are doing it because it's the right thing to do. But either way, it's good to see the industry reacting so much more responsibly. We've still got a long way to go to convince people, including the younger generation, that mining is not a bad thing. Done responsibly, it could be a great economic driver. And we need, unless we're going to go back to live in caves again, we need metals. So key is doing it responsibly and making sure that everybody wins.
I agree with that. Lots of things we can talk about there, but I think, today you guys have set a model out for people who are just coming up with some of these ideas that you guys came up with decades ago. By the way, I'd love to see that Black Rhino program get renewed, and I'd love to get my hands on one of those Rhino bars as well. But keep that going. And then the conversation surrounding energy is another thing you and I could talk about a lot, and also, clean water and good medical facilities and so forth in some of these developing regions. Clive, you're a director over at Base and Precious Metals Junior B Metals. Any comments on B Metals at this point, and of course the progress over the past couple of years there?
Sure. Yeah, the B Metals is a company that B2Gold is the largest shareholder of, and the idea there was just we'll never be conflicted in the sense that I've really been primarily involved in two companies in my life, and that was BEMA for 30 years, and now B2 for 12 years plus. So we're very focused on what we do. But we've been approached with many opportunities around the world and other metals in addition to gold. And we've always said, well, no, we're a gold miner. So we just thought we'd put together, we have a very good management team at B Metals. We thought some of us would put up some of our own money and see if we could be successful not only in base metals, but also some gold projects that aren't the size for B2Gold. So that's why we formed B Metals, and I'm a large shareholder and happy to be there. We've got some really good projects we're drilling in Japan, which is quite exciting, and some other opportunities in base metals in Zambia and an interesting project in Idaho. So it's a company that B2Gold, there's no conflict because B2Gold is the biggest shareholder. So if the B2Gold team is looking at acquisitions, which we do every single day, and if there's acquisitions that are not of the criteria for B2Gold, then clearly it's in the B2Gold shareholders' interest to let B Metals have a look at those opportunities, whether they be gold or other metals. B2 is going to stay a gold company primarily, but B Metals has the opportunity to go across the spectrum. So, we don't promote things ahead. I've never been a promoter in the sense of promoting your stock and then hoping you find something of value. I follow that. It's the other way around. It should be the other way around. You find something of value and then you go tell people about it. So B Metals is trading, I think, somewhere around 26 cents, whatever. Very, very low entry point for people. I'm a big shareholder. I'll be buying more. And I think it's going to be the potential to do what we've done with BMA and B2Gold, build another significant, profitable gold and base metals mining company.
Simple enough. I appreciate that. Well, Clive, wrapping up here, you've been in the business for a long time and you've been one of the more successful company builders and models for others. Any wisdom that you can share with maybe other CEOs who might be listening in, institutions, investors, et cetera, that are also listening in? What wisdom do you offer for investors who are allocating capital to this sector, and maybe some advice for a CEO that might be younger, trying to get to where you are?
Yeah, I think for young CEOs, I think it's you have to find very good technical people and you have to respect them and earn their trust. It has to be a two-way street. They have to trust you that you're not going to go out there and promise things like exploration results and stuff that they may not be able to deliver. So you have to have a great technical team. There's no such thing as a Renaissance man in the gold mining industry. So you really have to have great technical people. I'm so fortunate to have guys that have been around for so long, growing together and working together. So that's the first thing. From an investor point of view, I think it's about track record. Two things, what have they done before? Have they been successful? The management team you're looking at, have they been successful? And I think another thing that's really important is skin in the game. We founded BMA and we founded B2Gold. So we are very much aligned with our shareholders at a time when compensation and other things are often criticized because people look at companies that the principals don't have a lot of shares. We're on the same page as our shareholders. So I would look for companies that have a track record of success, that you can figure out if the people are honest and well-intentioned, and are they working for all the shareholders? And I think it's better if they're shareholders as well, hopefully significant shareholders in the company. So those are two things. Experience and skin in the game are things I look for when I'm looking at investments.
And for potential investors who are on the sidelines listening in here, market cap of B2Gold stands at about 6 billion Canadian here. What would you say to them about considering the B2Gold vehicle and the proposition at these current price levels?
Well, what I'd like to say to generalist funds, for people that aren't necessarily completely enamored with gold and that gold has to go higher, I would say you buy us because of we're so good at running our business and so profitable, and the dividend undervalued versus our peers clearly today, but also our ability to keep growing the company. We're very good at what we do. You don't need to buy us because you think gold's going higher. If gold goes higher, that's just a bonus with B2Gold shares. I think we're going to continue to grow the company and the market will reflect that. And we'll get back to the levels we were at a little over a year ago as we continue on this journey. We're clearly undervalued versus the sector. I expect some good news soon out of Mali, resolving the situation we've had there, which is an exploration issue. It's not about production. But we'll show that the government of Mali is continuing to respect the laws of the country, which they've done for decades. It's been a good place to be in gold mining. So I would suggest that B2Gold is a great buy, whether you believe gold is going higher or not.
Looking forward to seeing some of those things get done, and also Mali, the relationship continuing between the company and the government. And the best way for investors to reach out to the company.
We have a very good website, or contact Ian McLean, McLean, M-A-C-L-E-N, at B2Gold.com.
Clive, always a pleasure, sir. Best of luck with operations and growth in the coming year. And it's always good to chat, and let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Great questions. I enjoyed the chat.